الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله ذي الملك والملكوت ذي العزة والجبروت. الحمد لله حي قيوم لا ينام، عزيز لا يضام، قهار لا يرام. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. يقول الباري سبحانه وتعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you believe, fear Allah as you should be feared, and die not except on the state of Islam. For may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful, bestow upon us the gift to die on the state of Islam. Allahumma ameen ya Rabb al-Alameen. أما بعد، يقول رب العزة سبحانه وتعالى, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: صبغة الله ومن أحسن من الله صبغة ونحن له عابدون. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking on behalf of the believers, because the people of the book, they say, follow our guidance. This is to be the rightly, or to be rightly guidance, you follow our way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the believers, said, no, say we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the right guidance. And the believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make a person to really, in a way is going to be all transformed, all changed, to be acting upon the way of the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the transformation of a person in his heart, in their conscience, in their emotion, happen by the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qala sibghat Allah. And the sibgha, it is like the color. The sibgha is like dyeing something with a specific color. So sibghat Allah, so it is like the color of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sibghat Allah allati qala wa man ahsan min Allah sibgha. If there's better handiwork, better color than the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made. Therefore, we understand that the submission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like someone is being fully dyed into and soaked fully with the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the wisdom why it being called sibgha, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mentioned, because the sibgha, as you see, subhanAllah, the color that the person changed their color, or the change the dyeing of the color of clothes or anything else. So the same thing for the believer, you see the manifestation of this iman, or the effect of this iman, you see it in their way of the behavior, you see it in their character. Therefore the iman changed them to have, subhanAllah, certain way of acting, certain way of have their character, of being humble, and that is the sibgha of the believer. So the sibgha of the believer is to fulfill their complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we say complete submission to Allah, comes with the condition, because the complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have this fully sibgha, being attached or touch every aspect of the life of the human being. Therefore, this sibgha is the creed of Islam. And for a believer to be successful in their life, they must have the basis of every aspect of their life is aroused, and basis in this creed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we mean the sibgha. And when we go to dig into the element or the aspect that make the sibgha to be fulfilled the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defined, is to have the emotion, is to have the thinking, is to have the action, is to have your enthusiasm, is to have your custom, is to have the habit. All of it has one orientation, in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the meaning of the sibgha of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you want to give it a very comprehensive or a comprehensive name of the sibgha on how to act upon fulfilling this element of the creed to be the basis of every aspect of your life, which is make you to be a true Muslim, make you to be true believers. And we are in these blessed days, in which is fulfilled the complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave you the great opportunity in Ramadan to gain the piety, to increase in taqwa, to increase in God consciousness, so you will be implementing today and these days, so to complete your full submission, are every Hajj which is today in Mecca, or today actually moving to Mina, and tomorrow to the great day of Arafah, and after Arafah back to Mina, and they're going to do the tawaf. All of it is a complete submission to Allah. As you are here, and also witnessing this great festival in the universe of the ubudiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are also requested to fulfill the complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you take one, term to define the way to act on this aqidah, is the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah in its comprehensive meaning. Comprehensive meaning here, which is fulfilling the order of Allah, it is a remembrance of Allah. Doing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prevent yourself and avoid everything prohibited is a remembrance of Allah, because you do it because you remember Allah, and you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has prohibited you to do it, then that is a remembrance of Allah. The remembrance of Allah goes to the tasbih, praising Allah, exalting Allah, being grateful to Allah. So all of that are the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now on the other hand, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala go to touch many of the field of the thinking, as we have said, the field of the heart, the field of the action. But there is another particular field, which is the specific action that most of the people are heedless about, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind us about it into these days, which is the action of the nusuk, of the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the symbols of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Ibrahim alayhi salam, قال ربنا أرنا نسكنا, أرنا, show us our rights, Ya Allah, how to fulfill our submission to you. And if the submission happen with the heart, with the soul, and with every aspect of our, subhanallah, of our hearts and our iman, it remains the part of the body. Because the body, the submission of the body, it might not be something that someone will comprehend it. I mean, you say alhamdulillah with your heart to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but how your body is going to also fulfill the element of submission. For this reason, the hajj, one of the elements of the hajj is that full submission of the body. When we say full submission of the body, you do action that you do not know its wisdom. Does not mean that it does not have wisdom, but we are not. That wisdom has not been disclosed for us. But the true wisdom is your submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That action that we call action ta'abudiyyah. You're making it because you are fully worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال إنما جعل الطواف بالبيت والصفا والمروة ورمي الجمار لإقامة ذكر الله. It's only subhanallah, the going around the Kaaba, shutting between the Safa and Marwa, throwing the pebbles has been, legislated, has been commanded by Allah to establish the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you are going around the Kaaba, there is no wisdom about it. Like, for example, what is the wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the alcohol haram because intoxicating, because it has a lot of negative impact on one's mind, on one's behavior, on one's conduct, on the community dividing. So there's the wisdom. But going around the Kaaba, the wisdom is to fulfill what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained you. Because that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had taught us to say, when someone is starting his going around the Kaaba, you say, Allahumma imanan bik. I'm doing this because I believe in you. وَاتِّبَاعًا قال واتباعا إيمانا بك وتصديقا لكتابك, and fulfilling and believing in what you have revealed in your book, and اتباعا لسنة نبيك, and following the guidance of your prophet. So this is, the body is there. He is making subhanallah the tawaf. The body is there. He's going between the Safa and Marwa. The body is there. He's throwing the pebbles, and all of it is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this part of the submission that we need as to submit with our heart, with our conscience, with our body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, comes that what we share with the one who is in Hajj and the one who do not has in Hajj is that specific nusuk, which is the qurban, which is the hadi, which is the sacrifice. So the sacrifice, if you look at it and you look closely to the animal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made halal for you to slaughter, made halal for you to eat from it, and you give a sadaqah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have you to first reflect on these animals. When you reflect on this animal by doing the nusuk, you'll see the abundance of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. Because how an animal will be, subhanallah, be subjected to you for you to eat from, or to, subhanallah, to kill by the leave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For this reason, the order to kill has been given to Allah. Therefore, it needs to be made in the name of Allah. And whoever who made it in the other than the name of Allah is an action of shirk, because these people didn't contribute with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any of the creation. For this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called the attention of the believer to reflect on such a thing. قال أولم يروا إلى سبحانه وتعالى إلى ما خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون. Do not they see whatever we have created from the grazing livestock, from the cattle, from what our hands subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. And the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to see how caring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by creating these specific animals for you. قال وذللناها لهم we have subjected this animal to you, and we make you to be their owners, and you have a benefit from its skin, the benefit from the wool that you get from قال وأوبارها وأصوافها وأشعارها, and the hair for some animal that they have, and all the benefit, and the alban, the milk, and the whatever subhanallah you produce from it, all of it is a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you have this animal in front of you, you see the abundance of the favor upon you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I have subjected this to you. So as to be aware of such a thing, it is crucial, because if you are not aware and conscious of this, therefore we will not be able to be grateful to Allah. We cannot be able to be thankful to Allah, and therefore we will not be able to glorify Allah the way it should be glorified. Why? Because how can you glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you are heedless on His favor that are between your hands? And for this reason, an-nusuk in its word, the meaning of the word of the nusuk is subhanallah extracted from the lingo of silver, which is extracted or purified from any metal. So an-nusuk means the core of the nusuk is al-ikhlas, is the sincerity. And this sincerity will help you to complete your servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when you come to the nusuk that you do, or all the type of the nusuk, so the nusuk, anything of action that you do with sincerity, intending to come close to Allah or to present it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be accepted by Him. And it comes to the animal that you are and you see subhanallah every day around you, and it becomes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you, to remind you of this great gift. Ask yourself, if the people all they gather together will be able to create one fly? Of course not. Will they be able to make this fly subjected to be obeying you, to be following you? No. Subhanallah. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in that animal, working creature, the right characteristic, so they will be subhanallah being able to be tamed, be able to be subjected and serving the human being. So this is subhanallah is not something that is granted. This is a gift from Allah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا قال أن خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما in Surah Yasin. قال وإن لكم في الأنعام العبرة, and you have in the cattle a great reminder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is getting you to drink a pure milk from the blood and all the instanting inside it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala get you this pure milk. And this is subhanallah, you seeing the abundance of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. This is going to be like for you, as you have this animal helping you then to reflect on this gift of taskhir, the gift of taskhir that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjected to you, everything on earth. هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا. It's Him who subhanahu wa ta'ala created to you everything on earth. Therefore, when you think about it, this ni'mah of taskhir, this gift of Allah subjecting, making subservient to you everything in this world, without it, none of us will be able to live 1 second in this universe, in this life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjected to you the air so you can breathe, subjected to you the earth that you can travel and walk and sleep subhanallah on this earth. Allah subjected to you the alternation of the day and the night and the sun and the moon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjected for you everything. So as being grateful to Allah, from just seeing the animal before your hand, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calling you to look around you in the universe. And you look around you, all the abundance of the favor upon you. So this is a Eid that a person with his nusuk reflect on all these elements to help us being thankful to Allah, to help open our eyes to everything around you. Everything you touch, everything you see in it a favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. Therefore, being heedless of such a thing, make a person to be ungrateful to Allah. Therefore, the presence of the heart, to be subhanallah mindful of all these gifts, to be reading the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in how many ayah talked about that there is a reflection, there is a lesson in the An'am, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, in Surah Al-Nahl, in Surah Yasin, and many other ayat, and with the surah that I have mentioned with details. So how a person will be fully heedless, eating and not even caring about the hand that made all this for you that Allah created it for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala watchful, caring to create for you this cattle for you to get benefit of it. And then from this cattle, when you reflect, you'll see all around you, not only this cattle, everything around you, it has been subservient to you. It has been subjected to you. So it will help you to live your life and to help you to fulfill your creed by traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safe and secure. This is said, make the believer, subhanAllah, this ni'mah of taskhir, this gift of Allah subjecting for you this element, starting with the animal between your hand, as Allah specified in the nusuk of this Eid, and from that animal, departing from this animal, you see everything around has been subjected to you. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell you, كَذَلِكَ سَخَّرَهَا لَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look in Surah Al-Hajj, Allah makes to be subservient to you. For what reason? So you can glorify Allah, so you can venerate Allah, so you can magnify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His guidance for you. So our takbir in the Eid need to be connected with this meaning, so our heart will be fresh, our insight will be illuminated, because when you reflect on all this element of subject, Allah subhanahu makes subservient to you, all this element around us, make you to awaken in you the conscience, to awaken in you the perception, or correct the perception. So you see the world around you in different way. You see everywhere the abundance of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. When you come to this point, then you're going to be a person who is grateful to Allah. Become a shakir lillah. Everything you say alhamdulillah. Everything subhanallah you see around you, touch, you say alhamdulillah. And when you become shakir lillah, when you elevate yourself by the leave of Allah to the level of being grateful, shakirin, then you have attained great success. Why? Because when you become a shakir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide you the ability to increase in righteousness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put more barakah in everything you do, because He said, and if you are grateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you in the blessing and increase you in His favor. Now, what will be, subhanallah, the vehicle, the drive that help us to have all this element in our heart, in our mind, to look at these animals as a great favor of Allah. We don't look at as udhiyah is going to be dead and then that's it. It's not, subhanallah, an automated action, is an action of reflection, is an action of shukr, is an action of looking at the abundance of the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The drive, it is the taqwa, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you do such a qurban, He wants to see the taqwa in your heart, how much you fear Allah, how much you glorify Allah, how much you are, subhanallah, venerating Allah, how much you want to be close to Allah. That's when you do your dhabh, that's when you do the qurban. Is either you do it with your hand, or you make someone to do it on your behalf, or you send it somewhere. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see in your heart. قَالَ لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا. It does not reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from this qurban, the flesh or the blood, but it what reaches Allah, the taqwa in your heart, the piety in your heart, the fear that is in your heart. When you have such a thing, you are elevating yourself to high level of iman. How, what is this level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call it al-ikhbad? For this reason, قال وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ جَعَلْنَا مَنْسَكًا. For every nation, we have for them rites of sacrifice, or these different rites like the Hajj and the sacrifice into the Hajj and the sacrifice for the rest of the Ummah. قال لِيُذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ. So they remember and glorify Allah and be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on what He has gave them, favored them, bestow upon them the gift of this animal. So this animal, dear brother, respected sister, is something so big into our life. If you just think about it, not the animal itself, but your relation between this animal as an action, and how it's turned to be directed to Allah. And you see this direction relation between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a servant who been dignified and a servant who been honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taking care of you in all what is around you, And this vehicle, or this subhanallah drive of the taqwa, elevate you to be from the mukhbitin. قال Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وإلهكم إله واحد. In the same ayah, and your Lord is one God subhanahu wa ta'ala. فله أسلموا, to him you submit. So our submission to be completed, we need to embrace this element or this meaning. So when we look at the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to be aware of it. We need to be conscious of it. We need to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't make your sacrifice just a dead meat to eat and to celebrate. No, your sacrifice required to mean for you taqwa, required to mean for you gratefulness, required to mean for you a point from which you depart with, inshallah, increasing in gratefulness to Allah and the nearness to Allah. Allah will give you then a gift that He'll make you from al-mukhbitin, because He said, give the glad tidings to the mukhbitin. Who are the mukhbitin? Are the humble people. They're the humbly submissive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you complete all the element of the ubudiyyah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow upon you 4 great characteristics of which define al-mukhbit. This characteristic, when you hear the name of Allah, your heart will tremble in fear, and that's a great thing for a believer to have. I mean, it's the utmost favor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow on his servant, becomes a true believer. The second one is, at anyone you are inflicted by a calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the ability of patience and perseverance, and He will help you to improve your salah and make you for those to raise, to donate in the sake of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala قال وبشر المخبتين الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم والصابرين على ما أصابهم والمقيم الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. So if you do this, subhanallah, Allah grant you this, and this is the true path of ihsan. We always, when we're talking about the ihsan, as the Prophet ﷺ has defined it, is to worship Allah as you see Him, and if you do not see Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore sees you. But how to get to the ihsan is through the way of completing your submission and be grateful. Then you'll be elevated to the level of the mukhbitin, and here you become from the muhsinin, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَبَشِّرِ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, and give glad tidings to the good doers, those who have fulfilled the complete submission with the element that we have mentioned. And all of this I mentioned is in one page in Surah Al-Hajj. Is all, subhanallah, you see them one after one in Surah Al-Hajj. Nusuk, mukhbitin, subhanallah, sakharaha lakum, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said after that, وَبَشِّرِ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And here the muhsinin have its foundation is to be from the shakirin, and the shukr cannot be by the tongue only. The shukr is by the deeds, by the action, by the, subhanallah, racing toward the righteous action, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقُلْ اعْمَلُوا آلَ دَاوُودَ شُكْرًا, or family of Dawood, act in righteousness as a way of gratefulness, and few from my servant who are grateful. فمay Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us grateful, and maybe from the few servant of His. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على النبي المصطفى أما بعد. The sibgha of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be colored with the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the grace honoring. But the sibgha, as you see, subhanallah, clothes which have any certain color, white for example, and you dye it with different color, that other color fully disappeared. And that's how the believer need to be immersing in the creed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that creed would define everything in his life and in her life. From their emotion, from their, subhanallah, conscious, from their thinking, soul, heart, action, and then comes, subhanallah, to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about these things, and not small things, are great things, because it helps you to understand the whole universe around you that has been subservient to you by the will of Allah, by the gift of Allah, by the favor of Allah, and which will allow you to see the abundance of the favor of Allah upon you. Then you will only have one option, to just be grateful to Allah, to be from the shakirin, and that is the greatest wisdom, as Allah told us that He bestowed upon His servant Luqman alayhi salam. Now, when we have such a thing, when you came to this level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be watching you and protecting your aqidah, protecting your freedom of belief, protecting you to empower yourself and the people around you with this element of belief and faith, so you can implement it in your life.
For this reason, when you come to this level, who's going to be defending you? Who's going to be your wali is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the end of this phase, it's the same. قال إن الله يدافع عن الذين آمنوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is defending the believers. Allah is defending, and He hates whoever who's betrayer and He is ungrateful. So a betrayer is someone who subhanAllah is ungrateful, because the ungratefulness is an action of betrayal. But the believer, if you elevate yourself to this level, not only to be dignified, not only to be honored, but you're going to be defended by Allah. Allah defend on you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will declare war for everyone that He want to hurt you. And only if you complete your submission. And it is an opportunity for us in this Eid. Tomorrow is Arafah. You're going to fast it. And Allah, out of His infinite mercy, He's going to expiate a year, subhanAllah, previous year of sins and upcoming years of sins. Look the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you to complete your submission. And then the Eid, you're going to offer your sacrifice with the meaning that we have mentioned, to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we believe, insha'Allah ta'ala, that our people in Gaza, Allah is defending them because they are enduring all this patience. They have connection with Allah, and we ولا نزكي على الله أحدا, but they have that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to defend them, and it is an example for us, to our heart, to continue to be with them and to always make dua for them. فنسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يجعلنا من الشاكرين. اللهم اجعلنا من عبادك الشاكرين. اللهم اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين. اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في أعمالنا كلها يا رب العالمين، واجعلنا يا أرحم الراحمين ذوي بصيرة مبصرة يا كريم يا رحمن يا رحيم. اللهم ارحم إخواننا في غزة، اللهم احفظهم بحفظك يا رب العالمين. اللهم أفرغ عليهم صبرا وثبت أقدامهم وانصرهم على المعتدين، إنك على كل شيء قدير وبالإجابة جدير. نعم المولى ونعم النصير. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأقم الصلاة يرحمكم الله.